call the meeting to order. Thank you everybody for being here, and thank you for going on without me last time. I appreciate that, and I can say that the recording really helped because that way I was able to watch it and get caught up with what you guys all talked about last time. So thank you for that. And we've got, hopefully everybody got the agenda as well as the slides of what we're going to be going through today. We'll be sharing those as we're going through them. We have just a few overview or highlight things that we want to talk about or go over first, and then we've got quite a bit of time set aside for discussion. And I know that we've got some topics that we want to talk about today. So we've got the vast majority of the meeting to cover those. So I hope everybody will feel like you get a chance to say what you need to say or hear what you're hoping to hear, and that we will come up with recommendations at the end of everything, because that is, again, the goal of this. So does anybody have anything pressing before we get started, or can we go through the meeting plan? Okay. Liz, can you share the slides?
Will do. There's a little bit of a delay. Let me know when you can see the slides.
Okay,
I can see them. Yep.
I can see them now. And we may have some folks who are guests, and we welcome everybody who's a guest. Most of the conversation that's going to be taking place right now will be amongst the committee members, as well as from Sergeant Plummer. And if anybody has any questions or anything that they'd like to add to the meeting, we have an online forum for you to do that. And if you need to, can we share that? Is there a chat box? I'm sorry, I'm not as familiar with Teams, where we could share the link to that online forum so that people could ask questions or make comments.
Yes, I'll ask Steve or Mitch to do that, since I'm sharing my screen and unable to do that at this moment.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and navigate and get that posted in the chat.
Perfect.
Thanks, Mitch.
And so if anybody has anything they'd like to add, then you can go to that site, scroll down to the bottom, and there's an online form for you to submit your comments. So welcome everybody to meeting number 6 of our committee. We have been working together to try to come up with recommendations to give to the legislature. So if we could go to the next slide. These are just kind of the ground rules. These were something that we've been following ever from the very beginning, and they're also in your agenda. We're going to be kind of mindful of time today, because I think that we have a lot that we want to talk about. So every once in a while, if I just do a time check, please, I'm not trying to be rude or interrupt. I just want to make sure that we get everything done that we're hoping to today. And I see Claire has his hand raised. Oh, you're on mute.
I didn't know I raised my hand.
Oh, okay. No worries. All right, so here are our current team members who have been working together for these past several, over a year now, and just wanted to recognize all of the energy and effort that everybody's putting into this. If we go forward then. Also want to thank everybody at ODFW, because you guys have been a big motivator and help guiding us along the way. So we are going to go through the goals of the meeting today. We've got 3 goals. You can see here that we've got a large section of time that we're going to review the progress and potential recommendations. And first on the list will be the discussion of the ghost hole. So we know that that is very important. We do want to save some time towards the end to talk about drafting our report, because that's coming up, as you guys know from the last meeting. And we hope to have this wrapped up by about 4. So see where we are now with the goals for the agenda. There we go. So we're going to review our progress. This won't take very long. We've got some things just to make sure that we're satisfied with what we've come up with so far and what else needs to be talked about. add to those recommendations. We'll hopefully get to the discussion of the Bay Clam temporary rules. There are a few topics that we haven't covered yet, so we need to make sure that we schedule those into our timeline and our future meetings. And we also want to try to establish a timeline and process for the report. So this is what we're hoping to accomplish today in the next 2 hours. Just as a review, here are the organization responsibilities. Am I coming off as really scratchy? Because I get a lot of.
Yeah, you are.
Okay. I don't know quite how to fix that. I'm sorry.
It's not too
It
terrible.
would help if everyone, it would help if everyone else muted when they're not speaking, and that might help prevent feedback.
Okay. Great. Thank you. So I think this is, again, just a review of our organization and our responsibilities. What we're trying to do together is identify our issues, participate in all the discussions, but really come up with recommendations. So if there are things we're hoping that that we want to discuss, we hope that there are some positive outcomes that we can report back. So if we can go forward from here then. We're currently in phase 2. We are convening our advisory panel and talking about the various issues. What I hope that we get done by the end of today is a date that we're going to establish, so that that's going to be our target for the report, getting the report over to ODFW, and knowing full well that they have to have some time on the back end to get that to the legislature. So before we leave, in case I forget, please, let's make sure that we come back to that and fill that in with a date. So our overall process has been working pretty well for us. We share our different understandings and from our different viewpoints and identify the issues. We try to seek solutions and develop recommendations. And so that's what we're going to try to follow today as well. So 2 of the primary goals that were established for us that we want to look at and take into consideration as we go through our discussions is the long-term sustainability of both the recreational and commercial harvest of our bay clams, and also improved management of our harvest in both the intertidal and subtidal zones. So these have been, we've identified these and articulated and ranked 21 priorities, and that is shown on the next few slides. Before we get to those, we did have 5 things that were outlined within the Senate bill that we have to address. We've been talking about these already for the most part, but we do still have 2 that we need to discuss, and we'll go over those in a little bit more detail. So as you can see, one of the primary ones that we were specifically supposed to talk about was the is the ghost hole. So when we all got together originally, we had these 21 issues. We voted on amongst ourselves the top issues, and the ones that you see here with stars are also those that were mandated by the Senate bill. So we're keeping on track, but we've got a lot of other things that we hope to have time to address. Okay, so up to this point, we've talked about the items that are in blue and come up with some recommendations, or there have been temporary rules established. We've had a request to revisit the ghost hole, so that's what we're going to do today. But then we've also discussed the ones that are kind of shown here in orange, but we need specific recommendations for those. Certainly we need those in order to write the report. And just kind of to remind us, we still have number 12 and 13, which are shown in gray, that are mandated by the Senate bill. And so we do have to discuss those as well. The remaining 14 through 21, we felt that as a group that those were important. So we will have to come up with our plan for how do we address those, knowing that we're kind of running short on time but we don't want to ignore them. So we want to give them the attention that that we deserve and what we can, how we might progress with those. So we probably won't discuss 14 through 21 today, and we certainly aren't going to get to all of these ones beforehand, but let's go through and take a look at the next slide. So we had one, well, from our previous discussions about the ghost hole, we came up with these 4 recommendations, but I think we wanted to open these up again for discussion, and also just to hear some of the recent occurrences that have been happening, so that we can make sure that any recommendations we are delivering account for all of those. A couple things that I would like to just kind of keep everybody thinking about is that these recommendations aren't going to get to the legislature until the end of next year. So if there are other things we need to do ahead of time, let's flag those and think about how can we make those happen, or how do we voice those recommendations earlier. So I'm going to ask Steve or Liz or Mitch, did you guys have anything that you want to add to this before we open up the discussion?
Yeah, so Steve here. So let me just read through these just to make sure that everybody's on board with these. So we addressed this issue back in January and have devoted, I think, maybe a couple of hours of our discussion to this high priority issue on how to identify ways to reduce the conflict in the ghost hole. And so we won't go through all of that discussion again, but recommendations that were offered up by members of TIBCAC first was to open up other areas or conduct surveys in new sites to figure out the abundance of bay clams. And that was offered up as an exploratory to see, can there be an incentive to move the commercial subtidal clam harvesting activity that currently takes place in the area north of the floating toilet to another area to reduce conflict there. And we had a meeting with the Department of Agriculture and asked specifically about that, the process to move their lines that designate open areas and closed areas. So keep in mind that's something we've talked about and have entered into a type of recommendation. In particular, TIBCAC members were interested in opening the sow and pig area north of the main channel, and then also recommending to ODFW to include that sow and pig area in our next ODFW stock estimate survey for the subtitle. So that's all captured in number 1. Number 2 is an important one, to consider recommending some temporal restrictions around the ghost hole area. And TIBCAC members offered different opinions about when those restrictions may take place. The priority conflict time is now. So we've got anglers out fishing in that narrow restricted area, and also commercial clamming taking place there. But we talked about enacting seasonal closures in that area, either in September, October, and/or November, to reduce these particular conflicts around the fall Chinook season. And we're seeing that occur now because that area is not closed. Third, we also, as TIBCAC members, you all recognize the need for increased awareness about the dive clam operations. And the specific recommendation was to install new signage at boat launches and docks and other venues. And I think we'll hear more about that today. And then fourth, we heard from you about the need to contact the Oregon Marine Board to look into the designation of a stronger wording regarding a safety area surrounding the ghost hole, to designate a more firm safety buffer. Right now, the current Marine Board law or wording just says exercise caution when you're in the immediate vicinity of a commercial vessel that's displaying a diver down flag, but there's no hard and fast definition of what that safety zone is. Other states have a recommendation or a requirement for 200 feet away, and that's the guideline for Washington at this point. California doesn't have a statewide 200-foot guideline. They leave that up to their counties or port districts or management entities with responsibility for the particular water bodies. So it varies throughout the state there. But anyways, so we were looking at a recommendation there. So that's the quick summary of the recommendations that have been offered up so far by the members of TIBCAC regarding this high priority issue, which is a priority for TIBCAC and was also identified as a important issue for TIBCAC to address in the statute that created our committee. That's a quick summary.
And so now I'm showing the slide here. I can either stop sharing screen so that you guys can see each other while you speak, and I can take notes on the back end there and then show it afterwards, or I can do it live, whatever the committee prefers.
Well, I can still see folks, so it's kind of handy to see the slide as well if you're going to refer to them.
Okay, I'll get back on. All right, so I'll turn this back over to Christy, and I can capture notes as people talk.
There we go. Thank you. I would say since Sergeant Plummer is here, maybe you could go ahead and share with us what you have. That way, if you need to take off, you would be able to respond to anything you need to.
Sure. Thank you. I had the most recent thing that I was involved in was I was approached by a diver. He was driving by and saw me there and decided he was going to stop and talk to me. This would have been on September 13th. And he wanted to tell me about a conflict that happened in that narrow channel that leads up to the ghost hole earlier that day while he was diving, or he was on the boat and he had divers in the water. This would have been the Rascal, and the diver that contacted me was James Dotson. And he had a conflict with a guide boat. It was he described it as a Black Willie's sled. And there were several folks fishing on this boat, and he passed by too fast and too close, according to Mr. Dotson. And they exchanged words, and there were some threats made. Apparently the guide said he was going to drag him off that boat, and they were going to settle it the old-fashioned way or something like that. And we certainly don't want that. But that's the kind of thing that's going on. And this boat was set up right in the, like I said, right in the narrow channel that's between the Garibaldi Marina and the ghost hole, that everyone has to pass through to get to the ghost hole if they're gonna fish. And so, but to be fair, while I was talking to Mr. Dotson on the roadside, I was right there at Hobsonville Point looking straight out at the Rascal, which was still out in the bay. And I watched a boat go by there carefully, slowly, and was able to give them that 200-foot buffer. So it can be done. It just, I think some of these folks get in a hurry, particularly maybe the guides, and, time is money for those guys. And, they just bomb through there sometimes. And so I think education is the key, and possibly separating these two user groups, having them, one of them in another part of the bay away from the ghost hole, and while the other one's using it, would be great. And I'm all for signage around the boat launches and things like that. I think that's worked well for us in other areas, like Netarts Bay with the boating accidents that we had in Netarts Bay this year. They put some additional signage up, and I think it's worked really well because it seems like it's the dynamic has changed out there. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have. If anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to try and answer them.
Greg, can I just ask for clarification? When you said that that the vessel, the dive vessel was in the area approaching the ghost hole, you mean north of the floating toilet, in the area that's actually open?
Yes, that's correct. So I was on the I was parked right next to Hobsonville Point on the south side of Hobsonville Point. And I was looking straight out at this boat. It was straight out for me. So it was, yes, north of the floating toilet.
So I'll say this, that there is plenty of room for other boats to go around us safely out there. And he's correct. And some people just are in a hurry, or they just don't care. I haven't been over in there in the way of what's the salmon fishing. Over time you learn to stay out of trouble's way. And in the evenings though, on every almost said day, there's absolutely nobody out there. I went out the other day and there was like 2 or 3 boats left, and they were all leaving already by the time we went out and set up at high tide, and there wasn't a single sport boat out there. So during parts of the day, there's no reason that we can't work out there, and avoid each other. But then again, it goes same to be said about some of the commercial guys are a little more chomping at the bit because we're facing each other against, quota, and having to compete with each other. And that is a main root problem to the whole ghost hole thing that hasn't been talked about enough at these meetings. If we were allowed to be able to get the clams when we needed to on an individual quota, IFQ, along with the same with the raking permits, there'd be a lot less conflict altogether. And we really need to have some science done out there, both by ODF and WC Corps, and independent science to back up, the same findings. But yeah, I agree a lot with what you said, Mr. Plummer.
I have a few comments here, Steve, if I could. Christy, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. Go ahead, Brett.
A couple of comments. One, obviously I fish out there pretty regularly. I have intentionally avoided the ghost hole for a couple of reasons the last couple of weeks, because when I've gone out there, there's been 2 or 3 dive boats that are anchored up right in the slot where everyone likes to troll through, and it's just not worth the hassle. Effectively, depending on where the dive boats are, you just miss some really good slots right off Hobsonville that are a problem. So I've gone over to a different area just to avoid the conflict. My big push is to have, the temporal restrictions in place. Give the dive boat somewhere else to go other than the ghost hole in September and October to avoid the conflict. I think it's a real serious life safety concern. No one wants to hurt the diver. No one wants to get in conflicts with other boaters. But I think it's inevitable if we continue the way we're going. I know the signage, I know the recommendations, but they're recommendations of how far you should stay away from the dive boat. Recommendation. It doesn't say shall, it says should. There is a difference, and I think that if there's a misunderstanding that there is a requirement to stay back 2 or 300 feet or whatever, that's not in place. The recommendation. I also, and I'm certainly not. I think if I was a dive boat operator and I intentionally, knowingly place my divers down in an area knowing that you're going to have multiple boats passing by overhead with your diver with treble hooks, at least 4 or 5 of them per boat, and more often than not more, with, 6 to 8 ounces of lead dragging along with each one of those lines right over your diver. I think that could be construed, as reckless. We just don't want that to happen. I think we should to separate the 2 user groups during September and October.
I agree with about everything you said there, Brett. A diver shouldn't be putting his people in harm's way, and I've chose to not to do that as much as possible. Kind of got caught off guard a lot of times over there in the ghost hole when salmon season came along, when we were trying to work and get stuff like orders that were already pre-existing finished, and we didn't have anywhere else to move to get out of the way. But I can't speak for some of the other divers that are parking over there in the way right now. So they shouldn't be necessarily placing themselves over there amongst all your boats in the morning on days when the salmon fishing is going on. But it's a crowded bay. It's a crowded bay.
Well, it is refreshing, Craig, to hear your comments on that. It sounds like at least you and I are on the same page on this. So where do we go from here, Christy?
Well,
Yes.
right as of now, I am under a lot of pressure to compete with the other guys that are over there raking in a lot of pounds. And as of yesterday, there was a boat parked extremely far north out of the line over the Hobsonville deal. I took a multi-minute video of it. It's nothing that I haven't reported multiple times that I've not seen anything done about. I find it frustrating to see somebody in one of the other boats moving in on ground that's untouched so that they can get ahead on the quota, because of a quota problem. It incites people to do things like that, and that wouldn't be going on if we were all on individual quotas, and I could say get my clams in December afterward and stuff like that. But right as of now, I'm under a pressure to make sure I get enough pounds of clams in for my food grade and for any potential people I'll be calling me up here, just to be able to get by with my bills and keep my divers working too. So, but I've been staying over there and working over in areas that by the green can and stuff like that aren't quite as productive. And there's a little bit more bycatch problem with gapers that I don't like to work in. So, I think the gaper quota got shut down awful early, and when it does, it should be, we should be able to at least be able to continue to get what was allotted to us under state mandate to the poundage as a slow increment bycatch, at least to add up those numbers, because when they get shut down early, it just makes it harder on business and everybody, and puts more pressure on everybody to be over there working when they don't need to be.
I'll say this, Craig. If we want to consider, if the committee wants to consider talking about IFQs, I think that was issue number 21 on our list. That can become a dedicated meeting. IFQs are a multi-year process to develop, and so what we could also would really like and welcome from TIPCAC are these kind of interim recommendations. What do we do in the meantime if, for example, IFQ system is put in place? So, kind of returning to this issue and some of the other ones that we'll talk about today, what do we do in the meantime?
I think that that's the same story I've always heard. It takes years to accomplish anything, but it seems like all the other fisheries manage to make decisions on a pretty spot-on moment with salmon and closures and other things. The data's already in for an IFQ in the existing fish tickets. You go back on past data to do that. You don't plan on allowing you know, the next 5 years to proceed with different closures to come up with the number that you allot to those IFQs. You go on past data of the skin in the game that people had in the past on their permits, and you don't let business, you know, fluctuate and change with bad times, and then come up with a plan for that. It's already, the data's already there. It's just a matter of actually people doing the groundwork and sitting down and crunching the numbers, which is just a mismanagement thing from my standpoint. From what I actually understood is the only reason they don't want to do any IFQs or limited entry permits on raking was because if there were, most of the permits would fall onto people in Washington, because if you did 10 permits, 7 of those permits would fall onto Washington clammers, which then it makes it a non-state fishery. So then you got to make the decision to give out enough permits to balance that out to make it a state fishery, or you come up with some sort of a solution to make those permits transferable, so that it doesn't matter what state you're in.
Is that something that I think we would probably want to have everybody talking about that. Is that something that we can add as a 5th recommendation then, and come up with what are we going to recommend? Those are great ideas, Craig. And if we can get consensus among the group, then I think that's something that we should put forward.
Well, I mean, I do have a pretty good perspective on what's going on. I've been out there and I kind of understand, you know, what the dynamics are from a lot of perspectives, except for I do see a management perspective problem from my end. In a lot of the fisheries, it's hard to get by. It seems like it's always you know, getting tighter, more stuff. There's no way for us to look online or find out even where we're at on the quota to even know how hard we should be competing.
Steve, you had your hand up.
Anyway.
Yeah, I had my hand up, and I was going to make the same exact suggestion that we add a 5th recommendation here. This wording is great: to consider alternative management system, for example, IFQs, and then just put a C TIBCAC priority number 21. And just to remind everybody, priority topic number 21 is for TIBCAC to discuss individual fishing quotas, or IFQs, for the commercial bay clam fisheries. So that's still out there as a topic for us to discuss. But anyways, this is the first time that has or not first time, but been raised up as a way to alleviate the conflict or need for multi-dive clam vessels operating at the same time in the contested ghost hole area. So that's a nice addition today. Are there other modifications or revisions to these existing recommendations based on what Greg Plummer just shared with us, or new observations this season that has occurred beyond our earlier discussion earlier in the year?
I would like to see the Sea Corps do their survey extended not only to the sow and pigs area, but out clear to the extension to the ends of the jetties, and even inside the ocean, to see what kind of stock assessment is out there for, you know, for future clams, and not for us to harvest, but just for biomass.
So that would be the down below as well, include the sow and pig area and other areas in the new seeker survey.
Okay, I see a hand up.
Can I clarify though, Liz, what you've written in is to open that area out to the jetties, but add that to the seeker survey as well. Sow and pig area and down below in the seeker. There you go. Now we have to also face this situation. So again, these are your recommendations that would be offered to ODFW at the end of next, or at the, fall of next year, end of summer or fall of next year. And then we would move forward with those, with our recommendations to the legislators. But we need to ask at this point, do you think, in your opinion, that we should take action with a temporary rule on a faster basis than that? Is this such an issue that we need to take some action, these or others, right away? Should we begin to think about these as a temporary rule?
So can that happen, Steve, with the ghost hole seasonal closure right now?
Well, we have that, that opportunity to enact a temporary rule if it rises to the point where it's, close to an emergency situation. And then we take that forward to the leadership of ODFW and ask them to consider a temporary rule, which is temporary, before a permanent rule.
Well, I would strongly support that. Another thing I'd like to make just now picked up on looking at the slide, the temporal restrictions around the ghost hole, different opinions about restrictions. I think that kind of softens that a little bit. I mean, I think we've sorted those out. Isn't that right?
Well, I think we were trying to figure out, was September the problem, or was it October or November, or that whole season?
Well, I think a good place to start is September and October, period, and save some lives, save some conflict, save some OSP and Coast Guard and Sheriff's Office time as well.
Can I,
Brett,
can I?
oh, hold on 1 second. Brett's had his hand up for a while. Then we'll get back to you, Craig.
Thank you. I know we were talking about the ghost hole and the diving, and the only thing that I do down there is commercial rake, and Craig brought that up about Washington guys and the permits and the IFQs. The only thing that really has been affected is the raking, and as an email was sent out to you guys a while ago about how many clams were in the bay, and there was a quota put on the rakers. That's the only thing that was affected, really. I would love to also add to Craig's point of increasing the quota. And I'm not just telling you this. I'd tell you if there was not very many clams out there, or cockles. There's more clams, and you can go back to fish tickets and you can see the amount of clams when we dug in June of last year to prior years. There's more clams out there right now than ever before, and I think that is because of the 2 3/4 rule. So as we talk about the ghost hole and all these other things, there was an absolute lot of rakers 2 years ago, not as many this year. I think that needs to be a huge topic for us moving forward also.
Okay, thank you. Craig and then Shane. Oh, Craig, you're on mute.
Sorry, I think that on the temporary rule as an experiment, we should leave the afternoon PM time when the boats clear out over in the ghost hole for us to be able to work. Just because we shouldn't be caught off guard. You guys trying to put us out of business is what that would, basically amount to, and keep the aquarium from getting clams and other institutions that need what's going on. So I'd agree with the September October temporary rule, but only in the mornings, and I'm pretty strongly about that. I won't. Otherwise, I won't agree at all.
Craig, can you talk to us a little bit about, are there additional safety issues for working at night for you and for divers and those operations?
That would be the same as me asking, why can't they just go fish at night? But, you know, I don't want to be up at night. So, and and there would be extra safety issues. If your diver had to bail, you wouldn't be able to see them behind the boat disappear in the bay in the current. So yeah, absolutely not going to be diving at night.
You mean the afternoon then? Is that what you're talking? I'm just trying to figure out what time you're talking about.
Yeah, in the PM times, you know, the other day we went out and there was, you know, 2 boats left over at the ghost hole. Everybody quits salmon fishing on the tide usually, or something, and everybody will bail in the afternoon when the wind comes up. There might not be anybody over there at all if the weather's crappy, and I'll still go over there and work. So having it shut down just straight across the board, you know, all of a sudden as a temporary rule, it's just no, that doesn't work. There are other places to work in the bay, but they are not as productive when you need to get an order and when we're on quotas. So unless there's a temporary rule changed on transferability on permits, quotas done in a reasonable fashion of time and stuff like that, then I don't see a temporary rule going in on us being banned out of an area for the reason mainly because we're in somebody's way. More so than safety. Safety comes first, but it's still mostly about us being in the way.
Thank you for that clarity.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Shane, you want to go next, please?
Yeah, so I would also have to strongly oppose that temporal restriction just because right now the only clam available to us to go and harvest are butter clams. So that would put all dive operations out of work. And yeah, that would be pretty hard on everybody. Pretty much just saying, hey, you know, no more work for the rest of the year because usually by November, December, that's when it's all super rainy, bay gets all mudded out, so chances for diving are slim to none. And right now is like the last good stretch of the dive season for majority of the boats, and plus that being just the main area for the butters. So I mean, the only alternative I could really think of would be either extending the boundary line and allowing us to get more into the sow and pig area or something like that. But yeah, just putting a closure in the ghost hole between September to late October, early November would be devastating to the commercial business.
How would you feel about if it was open in the in afternoons versus mornings? Would that change would that help?
That's just hard to say because you know the tides don't stick to a regularly scheduled clock. You know, I mean the dive times vary every day. I mean, there's no day where it's like, hey, you know, we're gonna be doing this exact time frame for, you know, a week or two, but our time is adjusted daily, so it's kind of a hard thing to really set in place.
Is it possible through a temporary rule to extend the boundaries?
I would hope so. I mean, that would, I think, would help resolve a lot of the conflict.
Yeah, sure. Let's give it all to them.
Steve, did you? Your hand was up.
Oh, you're doing a great job, Christy, in terms of just trying to identify the possible time frame. So what I'd suggest is that that first bullet for number 2, seasonal closures September, October, November, just add to that in the morning. And Shane, I agree that doesn't fit everything there, but just to leave something so that that's not an absolute closure. That's a season and time.
So Steve, what are we talking about in the morning? I'm trying to figure, you know, how do you get that out to folks? It's easily understand.
Yeah, this all comes down to an enforcement kind of issue, and that's where it's helpful to have OSP on board. Greg, how would that work from the?
I think that would be more on us and up to our, you know, you've had less of us to explain that to. And if we, you know, why do I want to pull over there even in the afternoon, say Brett, and there's another, you know, 20 or 30 boats over there, I'll still choose to go over somewhere else in the bay that's less crowded. You know, if I can, and it's the same way with other dive boats. I'd prefer to work away from them, and I think most dive boats prefer work away from each other as well. But I have noticed the dive boats have been trying to hug closer over to the shore and be out of the way, the direct, you know, narrower area passage of the ghost hole, right there at Hobsonville Point. From my observations, from you know, when I haven't been over there, but other people have been. I've been asked to go over there by a guy that, you know, that was looking for somebody's prosthetic hand they lost, right there off of Hobsonville Point, right in the pinch in the narrows. But you know, we can't necessarily go park right there right now and clam and look for that, you know, with the amount of boats going on over there. So some fishermen apparently lost his hand over there, so can't get a replacement very easy.
I think I heard Barbara's voice, but I'm not seeing you on my list of people. So Barbara, if that was you and you're raising your hand, would you like to contribute?
Oh, I was just going to point out that there are rules as to when you can fish: an hour before sunrise and an hour after sunset. So it's not a choice of fishermen to go out and fish at night. That's against the law.
Okay, thank you.
Well, with all the pressure on the salmon as an endangered species, maybe we should speak about cutting the hours and the amount of time that the salmon fishermen are, you know, in our way, in a sense, if we were to go backwards in the conversation. But you know, I'm not trying to look at it like that. But in reality, there should be some give and take on both sides. You know, I own 2 salmon permits, and I could, you know, be going out and fishing a lot more salmon, but I choose not to because I see more of a problem with that as a sustainable fishery than I do the clams, and mostly because of the amount of sport people fishing and hook and catch. You know, how many fish do you have to release that have been hooked and bleeding to catch your 2 fish that are the legal ones you get to take in? You know, we caught a guy last year skinned or fillet alive a 6-foot sturgeon while he was out there salmon fishing, and let it go and swam by the boat still alive, bleeding. And you know, and nothing ended up even happening. Got it reported, took pictures, fish got taken by somebody, but nothing ever came of it. So, you know.
Well, my whole premise on this whole committee is that we're supposed to have the Sea Corps data before we set limits or temporary rules.
I agree with
And
that
I'm
too.
still waiting for that to happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's just not going to. So we have to do the best we can. It would have been nice. I am seeing I'm seeing a hand up, but I can't tell who it is. It's the initials RH, and if you're a member of the committee, please feel free to ask your question. But if you're a visitor, then we have in the chat line a link for you to submit your input online. So I'm not sure who RH is. I'm sorry, I can't see everybody.
That's right. This is Ryan Howell with the Oregon State Police,
Oh,
and I also like Craig's ideas just as far as the time restrictions and maybe a morning closure, because the mornings seem to be when everybody is in a big hurry to get out to their fishing spot and troll back and forth. And it would at least eliminate half of the time that those boats are in transit. You know, they could get out there, get to their fishing location, and then we're only dealing with that afternoon when they're maybe headed back to the docks and would be, you know, traveling a little bit slower, hopefully, and take that safety portion into consideration. So I think that does have merit, and just wanted to throw that out there.
Great, thank you. Claire, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so I wanted to go back to clarification. So am I understanding that a temporary rule for the sow and pig area that would open that up right now, that's not a possibility? I heard it suggested, but then it sounded like it's all kind of got avoided, but it sounded like it could solve some of these problems. So that's my first question. And then maybe somebody has an answer to that first before I go to the second question.
Yeah, Steve, please.
Yeah, so good question, Claire. So once again, that area is not we have to work with the Oregon Department of Agriculture on that. And so that, those lines are set up there by Department of Ag based on their water quality monitoring, keeping tabs on fecal indicator bacteria. It's beyond the jurisdiction of ODFW, which is why we brought in the Department of Agriculture. Remember, we had Alex Manderson come and speak with us about the rationale behind those open areas and closed areas. So
and you're still in conversation with them. I think you said at the beginning of the meeting. Is that this conversation about opening that up, I assume?
Well, we haven't continued with that discussion with him. He's aware that that's an interest in TIBCAC, and that TIBCAC may come forward with recommendations to explore moving that line. But it hasn't been presented to him in a temporary rule manner at this point.
Okay, because I think that is one that we're looking towards, I think, as TIBCAC. I think it's in the way it's written. It seems like it's there. But a temporary rule wouldn't work. My second question had to do with the time of the tide. When would you determine when people could go out in the afternoon? Did you set a time and say, 2:30, or would you have to base it on tide? Because I heard that boats go in basically after the high tide, I think is what I heard Craig saying, or somebody was saying something about tides and boats. So would you base it on the tides so it'd be changeable each day, or would you have to do it on a specific time to make it more enforceable, easier to enforce? I don't know who could answer.
My mentioning of boats leaving on the tide the other day was only just they had left the other day in the afternoon at high tide, maybe because the wind was coming up, maybe because, I don't know, the fishing was off. I don't know when the salmon fishermen prefer come and go. I'm just using it as a suggestion that, in the afternoon, most of the boats in the Ghost Hole have been out there all day and are tired of being on the water since morning. They just clear out. If you were to do a survey of how many boats are out there, every morning, as opposed to how many are out there after 12 or 1 o'clock, you'd see striking difference.
Well, obviously I fish out there, and I fish on the tide, but the wind comes up in the afternoon. You can't keep a boat straight and roll properly. And so, I'm just saying, okay, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, most of the boats are probably going to be gone.
Claire, was that, you have another question?
Yeah, I do have one more thought there is if you set a time, it seems like, that if you put signage on the main boat launches and just simply said the area will be free of dive fishers in the morning, but they will be moving in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something, everybody would read it. They would expect such a thing to happen as that. I don't know what all the complications would be to that. And I don't know exactly what the time would be that you'd want to move in or out, or what's even reasonable. If 2 o'clock is so late now because it gets dark by, 6 or whatever, that's a problem also. And so, but I'm thinking that, it's something that's doable. If we can't open up the sow and pig, at least be able to pick up some of the quota work on that during this the remainder of this year.
Hey, Shane, and then Steve.
Yeah, Steve just addressed part of what I was had in mind, but yeah, 2 o'clock would be a little late for us just because our daylight is getting shorter, and that would leave right now about 6 hours, but as the weeks go on, that's going to be getting shorter and shorter. Um, if we did have to do a time limit thing, I would be more in favor towards like around 11 a.m. or noon, because that's about when the wind does start to pick up. I mean, it's not blazing that soon, but that's when it starts to noticeably, increase. It's like, oh yeah, there's starting to breeze, and the breeze turns into some blowing winds. And then yeah, as far as increasing boundary, sow and pig definitely, but I haven't been out there too much. And if Craig was saying there's been some boats that have been a little north of the line at Hobsonville, maybe even extending that line about 200 feet to where the boats could be on one side of Hobsonville and then the fishermen could be on the other side, and that way everyone's out of each other's way. We get clams, they get fish, possibly something like that. But I would say, as far as the time restriction, I think 2 is way too late in the afternoon. I mean, noon would probably be like the latest that would give us a good day to get out there and have a productive harvest.
So I don't know how to put my hand up on the little thing on there, but what if we do a temporary opening on the sow and pigs area, though? Something I want to clarify is the reason I don't have it, none of us probably work at the sow and pigs area to do butter clams, is because we have a lot of bycatch gapers, and we can't keep them, and I don't like leaving them. And so we do go target them over at the ghost hole, or over where Shane just talked about at the on the northeast side of the Hobsonville Point. But in both of those two places, at the sow and pigs and at the ghost hole, we're still limiting ourselves by accepting that offer in some aspects. It's not going to give us everything. Those areas are harder to work in for several reasons. The bottom's a lot harder to work, and there's a lot less current, and it's a lot more miserable, and a lot less time that we can work in those two areas because there is less current. So, we do only choose to be where we are, not to be in the way in the Hobsonville channel and the ghost hole. It is about having a diver down misery and production. So just saying, I think that you need to put on there, if we're going to have a temporary rule on the sow and pigs on the act now thing, there needs to be given back any bycatch that we had on or any gapers that weren't fully to quota, or some sort of a percentage bycatch added on to doing butters, because there's literally, for 1,000 pounds of butters over there, probably a 200-pound bycatch or more. Over at the Hobsonville area, when we do clams, we do 1,000 pounds, and we'll have a 60-pound bycatch of gapers early in the year before the quota is got. So, it's just there's a trade-off right there for the clams and what's going on is sustainability, if that isn't something that's addressed with that temporary rule. That goes for steamer clams too, or little necks.
Okay, thank you. I just want to do a time check. We're at 3 o'clock. What I'm kind of hearing, and just to try to summarize, is that it seems like if we feel that some immediate action needs to take place for safety reasons, there really are only 1 or 2 options that we have that would be done immediately. Everything else would be a longer term suggestion. So it sounds like it's possible, I'm not saying we've agreed to it yet, but possible to do a temporary restriction. And then the other thing that might be possible is just putting up some signage. Is the situation critical enough that we think that this should be done now?
I say yes. I mean, anytime it's someone's life is at stake. I mean, come on. We have a responsibility to respond, and I think a temporary restriction would certainly address that. If we don't, I want to go on record as saying, that I strongly support it. If we don't, shame on us. I mean, if we don't move on this, we would knowingly potentially cause someone to be injured. Not, it's not something we want to have happen. And I think it's inevitable that someone is going to get hurt out there, God forbid, and shame on us if we don't move now.
And also, if we do get temporary restrictions, we should be allowed, alternative temporary allowances as well to help compensate that. But signage, I do want to stress that as well, because education is, or lack of education is a large part of the problem as well. Finding locals like, Brent here, he knows how it goes, but you get a lot of people from out of town that just don't know. And that's, the real big issue. So signage is definitely something that needs to be addressed ASAP.
Yes,
But
agreed.
signage certainly helps, as Sergeant Plummer mentioned. It really helped in Netarts Bay address some of the issues there and some of the safety issues. So, yeah, I strongly support the signage too.
What would we need to do in order to get the signs up? Who would be responsible for doing that?
Well, let me ask, who when something happens elsewhere, like at Netarts, and signs are slapped up instantly, and in a lot of other cases, who pays for all that? The same people, I imagine.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Who is it?
Yeah.
Well, in the case of Netarts, state parks took a piece of it. Marine Board took another piece of it. Local groups took another piece of it, including the fire department and the sheriff's office. I mean, and OSP. It was a collaborative effort, but it got done, and it got done quickly.
So it sounds like there needs to be a sign committee made.
Yeah, it'd be great if we could just use the same signs or close to the same signs as Netarts did. Figure out who would be the lead person. Steve and Claire, I see your guys' hands up.
Well, I don't want to detract from this discussion on signs. I want to bring up something else. So I'll defer to Claire here.
Okay.
I was just going to say that we have put up signs, webs, which I helped work with and help get going. Helped put up signs, and we put up signs on our own, and we have usually been able to get signs within a 2 to 3 week period, but that's actually a pretty long period of time when we're looking at where we're at already in this season. And those are those aluminum signs printed by the prison at South Fork, or by the prison anyway, by the Oregon prison system. I don't know if it's South Fork or not. I don't know what signs exist also that we could just simply have printed for us automatically. I'm not sure who to contact on that.
Is there somebody within this group that would be willing to take the lead on this?
I'm certainly willing to help on it. I don't know. I'd need some guidance as to what exactly, I'm not sure who I would contact with the signs that are out at Netarts, and what they would, are the signs at Netarts, they have a Diver Dan sign there or something, or what do they have? I read the ones at Netarts all the time, and I put up a lot of them myself, but I don't remember what else out there.
Well, the real catcher on the signs, I think, was, they kind of a shock and awe statement. So many people have perished here. Wear your life jacket. I live in Netarts, and I can't think of. I was just there the other day, but I can't remember exactly what the language was. But I know state parks and the Marine Board played a significant role in getting those signs made and up.
So it'd need to be state parks, Marine Board, maybe with life jackets and whatever. And then we're also talking about something specifically about diving, right? The
Yeah.
rules with diving. I know there was a conflict in what would Oregon have with a 200-foot rule versus other rules right now, which don't exist in Oregon. What would Oregon rule be that we would want to put down with that, or just simply say, if you see a dive boat, stay away, or what would that look like?
What's the international dive flag standard rule that that the alpha flag standard rule? How's that written up? How would the Coast Guard look at that?
That's 200 feet, so with the Coast Guard. So I'm wondering, since it's going to go on a sign, it needs to be something that'll work politically and through all the agencies, and not something we just randomly put up there. So if we all agree what the Coast Guard has is good, that's 200 feet, I think. The same as Oregon, California. So if people are willing to do that, I can check up with Coast Guard and these other places and see what it is and just write that down as though that's what ours is. What does that look like without,
that's what I have posted on my boat, that's not just the Coast Guard, standard, but that's the international standard for diving is 50 meters. So, I don't know why the state wouldn't adopt that for just common sense.
So if we post it, we'll get in trouble for that.
I was actually going to suggest that as long as we're not quoting a statute or anything, and we just say, please stay away and give whatever, please stay 200 meters away or whatever it is, then you're not quoting a statute. You shouldn't get in trouble for that.
Yeah, I would say either, something that says, stay away or proceed with extreme caution.
Or both.
Yeah, well, ideally both.
Yes, Steve, I think you have some clarification you can add here, please.
Yes, so I just encourage TIBCAC to look back at your presentation that we gave you in January during TIBCAC meeting number 3. We have a whole panel there that quotes the rules from the State Marine Board, and the actual wording is right there in that panel. So take a look back at that. We've provided that to you. But the way that it's worded in the existing rules for the Oregon Marine Board now is that operators of transiting vessels shall exercise caution commensurate with conditions when in the vicinity indicated by diving operations. And that can be simplified to really angling vessels should exercise caution when transiting through safety zone around clamming boats, something like that. That's the way that's worded, but take a look at that.
And I just posted a diver
put something down flag. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said I just posted in our chat a picture of a diver down flag sign. It doesn't have to be like this. This just came off of DEMA, which is a recreational scuba diving thing, but just something like that. And it doesn't even have to include the diver's part. It could just be the boater's part.
Let me mention, if the signs are made custom, you might mention on this, because this is different than just average diving. You don't have a free tank diver, but you might mention that divers are attached to the boat within 200 feet of the boat with stuff in the water. Maybe if you have to draw a picture, you actually show an umbilical floating on the surface, something like that. Just saying.
So I see quite a few hands up. Let's see if we can't get everybody to have a say here. Let's see. I can't see. I can only see a few people at a time, so I'm sorry. I'm missing some folks who might have had their hands up for a while. If you've had your hand up for a while, please speak up.
I'd like to raise up one other issue. So when we're talking about a seasonal and time extension of the closure area around the ghost hole, we haven't defined that. The ghost hole now is defined by ODFW Oregon Administrative Rules as the floating toilets south to Sandstone Point. So when we're talking about trying to alleviate conflict in the area north of the floating toilet, we would have to define where, how far. It sounds like to me, although I want to take back more input, that we're talking about the area from the floating toilets north to Hobsonville Point. Is that our collective understanding, or are we talking about an area larger than that?
Well, it's a
I
good,
think possibly a little larger than that. So like where Sandstone Point is, if I remember correctly, that's like right near the tip of Hobsonville. And I'm suggesting like, 200 or 300 feet beyond that. So I can't think of any landmark off the top of my mind without being out there looking at it. But I mean, nothing like, drastically far, but just enough that would give us enough space to work and be able to stay out of each other's hair, as well as being, out of the way of the sport fishermen.
Shane, I think, or at least on the map that we had, that we talked about back in January, Sandstone Point was south of the floating toilets, a considerable way up the channel.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm thinking somewhere northern.
Yeah.
Like,
So,
yeah,
so
okay.
we're,
Yeah,
so I think this discussion, for extending that closure area north from the floating toilets up to Hobsonville Point, but I want to just open that up so we're all crystal clear. We're talking about up to there, not all the way up to Garibaldi.
if you guys closed it all the way up to just Hobsonville Point, that would give us area that was, once you get past Hobsonville Point, or maybe even a little bit past Hobsonville Point, the channel there, it widens out, and people have a chance for more avoidance. And like what Shane was trying to describe, it going back in towards where the railroad crossing is. There's a sign that's back there. There's a channel marker sign there for coming in. To draw a line from that channel marker back in the off that mud flat, and to the Coast Guard station is what I had mentioned before, and I think what Shane means to say, because Sandstone Point is way down on the other side of the ghost hole, where we don't dive hardly at all, south of the bathrooms. And so the conflict, I would say, definitely encompasses, if we were diving south of the bathrooms, would encompass that all the way to Hobsonville Point and past that just a little bit. But if it was left the line at Hobsonville Point, there would be areas in front of that we would still be able to do butter clams, and potentially it might make us line up and be in the way more. But that just depends. That's the area where we can't work into, where there is a very large biomass of butters, because the line stops about where I've been quit working there, where you see my boat out. So.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I did a quick measure before this meeting on Google Earth, and the pinch point, the bottleneck there right at the floating toilets, the channel is only about 500 feet, 600 feet wide. And but as you move all the way up to Hobsonville Point, as Craig's pointed out, the channel opens way up. It's over 1,000 feet wide at that point. And about halfway between them, it's around 800 feet wide or so. So it opens up quite a bit. So if the temporary closure area kept that width of about 500 feet as it is now, defined south of the floating toilet, to just extend that strip 500 feet wide from the floating toilets up north to Hobsonville Point, that would leave a considerable area open to the west, as Craig's pointing out, but would alleviate the conflict, the primary conflict area, I believe to be the case. Does that make sense to everybody here?
Yeah, but how would you enforce the 500-foot line through that section? I mean, because we can park outside of that line, so there's going to be a conflict of problems there unless some buoys are set up.
Yeah, that's a good point. Hard to enforce that.
well,
OSD, Ryan or Greg, could you comment on that? Would we need to place buoys out to define exactly where that area is?
I think obviously.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
I was going to say it would certainly be helpful if we're going to be doing some enforcement out there to know exactly where that line is by the use of buoys, and maybe some sort of a marking on shore that we can work from. But and that goes for any suggested signs, signs with suggestions for those international rules, the same distances. We wouldn't be able to enforce that unless there's some kind of state law that's enacted that says the same thing.
Mhm.
So just wanted to point that out to you guys too.
Yeah, same thing. Just visual representations are by far easier for us to enforce, and also just for education purposes rather than, just arguing with somebody whether or not they were inside or just barely outside that line.
Right. Yeah, that's why we try to use these nice promontories like Hobsonville Point or the floating toilets or Sandstone Point, those kind of things.
I see Brent's hand up.
Well, I just took it down. But basically what I agree. It needs to be, a pretty darn clear line. And I'm thinking like Hobsonville Point. Everyone knows what it's like, what it looks like. I'm a little concerned about the 500 feet thing again, because that's pretty subject to interpretation. But I think just a clear demarcation, Hobsonville Point, works for me, and it works for, I think, most fishermen out there.
So I don't see the screen anymore, or the slides anymore, so I'm not exactly sure if we've been able to capture what we've decided upon. Okay, thank you. So are we all in agreement that there needs to be signage? Or maybe I should say, does anybody object to there being additional signage? Okay, I'm not hearing anybody. So we can move forward perhaps with having some folks be assigned some tasks to make this happen. What about the temporary restrictions? Do we have agreement here that this is what we would suggest for safety reasons? Or are there still some things that we need to discuss? Where does everybody stand?
Yeah, I'm still pretty hesitant on the temporal restrictions unless it does come with some temporal allowances as well, as far as more of the area over at Sow and Pig and possibly some more north of the Ghost Hole. But time restriction, I mean, definitely nothing past noon is where I'd have to stand firm on.
I feel like that would work, but I'm pretty reluctant, like Shane, on any temporary restrictions at all, unless there's, so the question to ODF and W, how many pounds exactly was harvested for the gaper clam quota? Was it at, above, or below? It's always been an issue. It's always been a whatever. But where was that number? Where did that number actually land? Is there room to add bycatch to us working over there for the fall, without going past what would be considered a normal state mandated quota? Because it's not just shut the quota down because you guys don't have the numbers in time, and there needs to be some sort of a give afterward if it gets shut down, shut down early, maybe even a take if it's shut down real late. But that shouldn't happen with the electronic fish tickets and everything. So
yeah, if it was shut down way too early, that's something I would like to talk about as well, and even seeing about allowing us to get closer to the actual cap of the quota, like maybe giving us, weekends to do gapers to be completely out of the sport fisherman's way, so we could, go get the remaining gaper quota or something. But yeah, that's
I don't.
unfortunate.
I do hear silence. I don't hear the number. I was told it was a number that was in the tens of thousands of pounds that wasn't that we didn't get.
Mitch, can you provide the actual values? You have the best handle on that.
Yes, I do believe that this year we did close it before that 235,000 pound cap was met. What I've discussed with upper management is that we look at this in more of a long-term management scenario, and we're I don't think going to make all of these adjustments, whether we fall below or above any single year cap.
Do you mean that you look at it as a long-term mismanagement project or a thing, because that we should be
Oh, you went mute, Craig.
I still think it's I still haven't heard the number, and I still think that it's more of a mismanagement problem, not a long-term management thing. It's been a long-term management problem, and I haven't heard the number, and I don't see why, if it's still quota that's on the books, that according to Oregon state legislative law says that we're allowed to harvest up to that. That's the poundage that we're allowed to harvest up to. And that's your guys' job as well, to make sure that we are allotted that, and not decide that you're going to just keep it for the future or something like that. That's not your guys' decision. That wasn't the way it was written in the law. We run our business on the numbers that we're given to you by that are given to us by you guys, and when that's yanked out from under us short, that makes a serious mismanagement problem with our own businesses. So,
Very serious.
Very, very serious, and we're at that kind of a very serious mismanagement problem this year. So, just saying.
Okay, sorry, I got to do a time check again. We're at 3:25. We're a little bit over on how long we were going to discuss various recommendations, and we discussed quite a few for the ghost hole. So even though we didn't get to another topic, I don't feel like we like this wasn't time very importantly spent. What I'm hearing, and perhaps you guys let me know if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing that perhaps the only true short-term solution is signage. Is that right?
I do think that would help out quite a bit, because lack of education is a big problem for most of the sport fishermen.
So because this is an immediate issue, then I would say that we probably need to have some folks very quickly work on this together to try to make this happen. Not only finding what signs might be available or just that we can copy from NETARTS, but then finding some place to make them and contacting the right people to put them up. Steve, did you have something?
Yeah, so I'll take that responsibility on for my team. So we'll contact the Oregon Marine Board and Oregon State Parks, and let them know that this committee has identified an immediate need for new signage to address diver safety issues in Tillamook Bay. And we'll ask them to meet with us directly and see what we can do to get new signs to address that issue for Tillamook. And these are to be placed, well, have to figure out exactly where the best places are. It sounds like at the boat launches, maybe on the floating toilet itself or somewhere else as well.
Boat launch, floating toilet, and then possibly also at the transit dock, where a lot of a lot of the guide boats tie the boats up in the evening. So like something along the ramp there.
And Brent, you have your hand up?
Yes, just want to be clear. Are you suggesting that we do not address the temporary closure issue and only put up signs?
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just not hearing that we've come to an agreed upon recommendation.
Well, how do we get there? I mean, do we need to vote? We've heard the arguments on both sides. I still maintain it's a life safety issue. We really shouldn't be dropping this or putting it aside for another meeting, knowing full well that we could have some potential more than conflicts and somebody actually, getting hurt or worse. So
I think the final decision on that would be with the ODFW by allowing us to have an alternative place to go. Because right now, butter clams are the only clams that we could go and harvest, and and that's it. That's all we got. So any restrictions puts a major restriction on the commercial side of things, and has a great effect for any employees that go out there to work. That's going to be a huge hit to their income.
Well, Shane, what I'm hearing you say is that you feel comfortable in putting your divers down amongst a bunch of boats if they're going to come right over the top of your divers.
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, that's why, the signage I think is a great help, but I mean, even if we could have somewhere else to go, like, so I don't want any conflicts. I don't want, there to be any like threatening issues for divers or, any possible scenario that could ruin someone's vacation to come catch a fish and turn it into a huge tragedy. I mean, that's nothing that anybody wants, but I mean, we don't want to put people out of work either. I mean, putting people out of work so other people can go have fun, that just doesn't seem, very logical.
Well, there's more than people just out having fun. There are people that are making money, commercially, the guides as well. But we don't need to go into that.
Right.
I just don't want to walk away from this opportunity to put a temporary restriction September and October during the daylight or during the morning hours and move on. It gives an opportunity in the afternoon when the boats are off the water, and divers should not be at risk, and it wouldn't be a hassle for the dive boat operators either, to have all those fishermen out of there. So just a thought. I just don't want to leave it on the table.
No, yeah, no, I agree.
Is that something we can take a vote on? Would you guys feel comfortable that we've discussed it enough and
That depends on what ODF&W does about, addressing what we asked.
Because I mean, that's pretty much just putting a limitation on us and not the other side. I mean, there should be give and take, not just us giving and giving.
Like I said, I still haven't heard the number for the gapers where what still potentially could be harvested. That's is that why the standstill all of a sudden happened and it came off the board at all altogether? Because it doesn't want to even be brought up or talked about because it's that gross, it's that bad of it's that far off.
I don't have the number on me and I can't see it when I'm sharing my screen and look it up. So Steve or Mitch is going to have to.
Because if it was the number we heard about, it's an example of what we're talking about as problems. That's the root cause of the problems. Is the rules the set as they are don't work with the fishery entirely.
Oh, I see Mitch has got his hand up. Did you have something, Mitch?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, a couple of different things. I would have to triple check the number, Craig, but I believe it was 186,000 pounds of gapers that were harvested this season. Like I said, I spoke with upper management about this, and we all agreed that we were going to approach the management of this fishery in a long-term sense, so that when we went 100,000 pounds over, we did not dock the fishery that amount the next year. And when we go under, we leave it at that.
That's not really our fault line, because we don't know what the other guys are getting. I mean, like, we, as you know, the divers, we can't keep track of what the total number is. I mean, that's the whole job of the ODFW. And I understand that if you guys may be understaffed or have a hard time keeping up, especially having these 24-hour electronic fish tickets. But if we're that far under, you know, how about even just giving us, like, you know, say like the weekend or a couple days a week, like 2 or 3 days, then that gives you guys some ample time to tally up what has been harvested and give us an actual shut off that's, you know, a lot closer to what the cap would be.
I want that part of the quota put back on to bycatch for butters through the remainder of butter season, because that is how the fishery should be managed. Common sense for the biology of the fishery. Because we should be allowed bycatch of what we're catching throughout the year, and the only reason that we're having all these conflicts is because of the management of the quotas. And so that stuff can be temporarily changed along with what we have going on. You know, I understand that you guys want to have this whole thing shut entirely down, and there'd be really a, you know, I'm sure if you guys could find a real environmental reason to do it, it would get shut down. And
that something like that should be decided until after the Secor survey, which, you know, is something
yes,
constantly coming up.
Yes, exactly. And we want the Secor survey, you know, and I have a feeling the reason the Secor survey is being held off on, because if you guys go with the same science that you did for giving us our limits on the last time, we'll end up with more limits and bigger quotas than we would before, because there's a bigger biomass in the bay because of size limits and because of the growth of the gapers since you guys took the last Secor survey. And that I can promise you, there'll be surprising numbers of clams compared to the last Secor survey. And I know that because I've talked to people that worked on that survey, and they've also looked at what we have out there on the bottom right now, diving, and they agree that there's a massive bio growth change in the bay in the last, you know, since that survey, which is a long time ago. So I think that there needs to be some serious give and not just take.
Okay, Liz has her hand up.
Well, one of the things we had hoped to have time to talk about today is to revisit those temporary rules, and one of them, of course, is that electronic ticket. What we're going to report was that, you know, there seems to be a little bit more education that I think can be improved by next year, so that everyone actually is reporting within that required period. Should we extend the use of this rule, in which case we'd have more timely information. So we still did see, you know, some significant delays during the gaper fishery, even though we had this electronic ticket reporting. So, but again, I think that's, you know, the first time the rule was implemented for this fishery. And I think by next year with education, should we move forward with this and, you know, continue with that electronic requirements, that would improve our ability to track that fishery. And certainly, you know, we can talk about ways to make that data available in more real time. Steve or Mitch, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I just wanted to say that, you know, by starting up the electronic monitoring, that was an effort made to be able to track this much more quickly and much more accurately. And so we're into charting new territory, and just echoing what Liz said, hopefully that'll increase the efficiency, because it has been, as Mitch described, very difficult to forecast. Some years have been as high as 100,000 pounds over the quota, other years under the quota. And so we're trying to bring that down into as close as we can to that quota. And the electronic fish tickets, 24-hour reporting is a significant advancement towards that increase in accuracy.
Okay, so I'm still not sure where we stand with trying to put forward whether we want to recommend a temporary rule or not. It sounds like we've got a lot of maybes if we had certain conditions in there, but unfortunately, I guess I don't understand well enough what ODFW is able to do in a temporary rule. So I don't know if you can expand boundaries. I don't know what you are allowed to do. And so unfortunately, I'm a little bit at a loss of what to propose that should be voted on.
Well, ODFW can put forward a temporary rule to our leaders and let them know that TIBCAC has recommended that we move forward with a rule on an immediate basis to address this issue in multiple ways, with an area restriction to take effect for October, November, maybe October. I'm not sure which months we're talking about here, north of the floating toilet. And that TIBCAC has also recommended some type of allowance to make up for that loss of clamming area. And the proposal is to open up the remaining amount from the 2021 gaper clam season. So we could advance that, the three of us who work for ODFW, we could advance that to our leaders. We can't guarantee that they'll accept that, because we're not the decision makers in that way, but we could articulate it and put it forward. That's all the commitment that we can make here sitting at this table.
With that, as far as, allowing to finish the 2021 gaper, I mean, as far as bringing to your leaders, even just a suggestion for just a couple days a week, that gives you guys, a few days during the week to gather the tackets and tally everything up. But that's a huge deal for us.
Yeah, so I think that we could, just to make sure that TIBCAC could move forward here today, we could advance that proposal to our leaders. Now, as Mitch has properly pointed out, we've had the discussion about advancing the season to take that remaining amount that was below the established quota. And ODFW leadership has taken steps or just said, no, we're not going to do that. So coupled with the area restriction now, they might reconsider that, or they could just hold firm to, their previous decision at the time that the closure happened. Again, I can't speak for them. But Christy, to help out just in terms of moving forward, we could put together a more complicated request for temporary rule that encompasses both of these major points here. Mitch or Liz, do you see a problem with that? I think we could put together a request for temporary rule that includes both the seasonal area restriction and an allowance for the loss of clam take in that area.
I see Claire's hand is up.
Yeah, just to be clear, so are we talking about completely closing that area around the ghost hole to clam diving, or just talking about the mornings in return for this other caveat of being able to pick up the gaper clams?
I think, Claire, we're talking about extending the closure area for the ghost hole from the floating toilets north to Hobsonville Point and extending out into the channel 500 feet. So extend that strip. And to do that on a temporary basis in through October, end of October. And coupled with that, then putting forward some kind of allowance for an increase in take to offset the area that's lost by the commercial dive industry.
So the afternoon piece is completely off right now. We're not talking about it at all.
No, that closure area would be closed only in the mornings, okay, up till noon.
Okay, thank you.
Remain open in the afternoons from noon on.
I would probably be in favor of that, listening to all the sides of just kind of putting it out there to all sides of this argument, probably as a temporary thing this year as we look for something more permanent. I would be probably in favor of that. But I'm in total agreement that there needs to be a trade-off. There really does need to be serious thought and effort and put into picking up the extra gapers to help offset the loss that is going to occur.
All right. Can everybody see the screen now with Liz's typing in that?
Yep.
Is this something that we're ready to take a vote on?
Yep.
Right. Liz, do you have, I can't, or does somebody have the list of our members that we could do a roll call and just ask everybody to say yay or nay?
I've got a list. I'll
Okay.
call. I'll call.
Thank you.
Could I ask for something to be added or a little bit of a change in the way you say your temporary rule at the bottom about the remaining of the gapers? That it be added to as a bycatch to the butters, as well as maybe just like Shane said, that you guys pick a day where you know, a weekday where there'll be less traffic, like a Wednesday or something, to do individual gaper attack.
Card set up and I'm back out of that, and there's the ticket down there, unless there's somewhere else on the Google site where it might be.
I'm not sure if somebody's trying to talk to the group or if somebody's having a side conversation.
What do you think of this, Steve? Does this capture everything? Temporary rule with the area restriction as you described before noon, with addition of remaining gaper landing cap for 2021 as better bycatch, and I guess we would specify a day to offset the aerial restriction to the fishery.
Yeah, I think that we could articulate that in a request for temporary rule to run that through ODFW leadership. I'm not sure about the specific day issue, but that would be to just highlight a particular day to increase safety.
It might work to just use weekdays to increase safety and
Yeah.
minimize conflict.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought this was in addition to butter bycatch. Am I misunderstanding?
Craig, I think this was you that recommended the change.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't think I understood that then.
So what's the question exactly? That you're misunderstanding what I meant by a bycatch added to the butters. I think that when we do butters draft.
No, it was the specific day for the.
Oh, but you know what? Even that's not going to be. Nobody's going to be over at the ghost hole doing those gapers. People go over to other places that are far away from where the salmon fishing's going on a day that somebody would pick to go do gapers. So that doesn't intermix with the problem that we have going on with the ghost hole. That's just allowing us to have a day to go out and get them. I think just generally though, when we do butters, there should be a bycatch to gapers, even if the quota's been got, but it should be taken out of the quota and allowed as an allowance. Just common sense, you know. So, but that's just, you know, it might be complicated, but it's what needs to be done. But so, yeah.
Okay, Claire.
Yeah, so talking about gaper bycatch, I assume it's the same as on the recreational clamming. If you dig a gaper, it's pretty much impossible because they have such thin shells to rebury them, or their survival rates really decrease drastically. It seems like once they're unearthed, and I assume that's true in the channel too. If it is, then I really think that that's something that should be considered as a in the long term, the butter bycatch, the gaper bycatch when you're harvesting butters, to keep those gapers as part of the gaper quota, to add it to it. I just commenting on the. It seems like a something that should be done anyway, just normally.
That's correct. Yeah, they have a harder time reburying themselves, and a lot of times when we see crab, just pick them up and run off. It's kind of funny actually, but yeah, they have a harder time getting down right away.
Okay, we have 13 more minutes for our meeting, so can we go ahead and do a vote here? Hopefully we've captured everything from everybody.
No, my hand was up. Did you not see that?
No, I can't tell who it is. Sorry. Go ahead, Barbara.
Okay, so my question is about the motion. We're
Mhm.
voting on whether to restrict dive boats in the ghost hole from dawn until noon, but that will only go into effect if the higher ODFW commission allows the bycatch. Is that the motion?
The way it reads right now is that we would be recommending a temporary rule with the area restriction that Steve described before noon, with the addition of remaining gaper landing cap for 2021, approximately 40,000 pounds as butter bycatch to offset aerial restriction. That's what it says.
Right. So, but I think I heard people saying, ODFW people saying that they can make the recommendation, but there's no guarantee that that will be approved.
Correct.
So should we have two separate motions, one for safety and one for the bycatch? So because it's kind of hard to pass the two if you can't guarantee the one. Does that make sense?
What does anybody else think? Claire?
I think they're tied together. So I would leave them together. I think it's important to realize there is a trade-off here, that one side is being favored, another side harmed, unless
Big time.
together.
So no restriction for safety if they don't get the additional. Is that correct? So we're just gonna, and we can't guarantee they're gonna get the extra. So we're gonna leave lives at risk as a committee decision.
Well, I think we have discussed and decided that we're all in favor of helping this be a more safe fishery. So I think we can make some movements on signage and stuff regardless of a rule.
I just wanted to be clear as to what I'm voting on.
I don't think the sign rule should be a part of the rule. The signs should just get done.
Yes. The sign rule is not being included in this.
I do see your issue as safety, though.
I do too, and you know, if it's a caveat, I'm 100% for safety. I'm 100% for the people getting what they need to survive as far as the commercial dive boats. But if those two are tied, I have to be a no vote because we cannot guarantee that ODFW is going to grant the bycatch, and that just, as a committee, we're putting people at risk. So I'm just explaining my position, and I'll wait for the vote.
I'm just wondering if depending, I'm wondering how specific we need to be on this language, since it's going to be ODFW upper management that decides this anyway. Any guidance from ODFW?
I do believe it is in the legislative law as a rule that we're allowed to harvest the full quota, and that's to be managed so that we can do so in favor, not favor of us, but for just equal treatment of us. And then when that isn't done, then we're not being, and then it's just not working for us. So.
Right.
Hey, Craig, let me go ahead and clarify here. I believe the rule states that is the maximum amount that can be harvested of that species by that fishery. It does not say that we will guarantee that you get that many.
Yeah, but at the same time, we've never harvested over 100,000 pounds of gapers, and that seems to be where your problem lies. It was actually, I think it's around 49,000 pounds over 1 year. And so taking, away clams, this year, how's that just decided to be like okay, without any actual consideration for us that are trying to survive. I mean, that's like us. That looks like somebody cutting your paycheck or taking away your benefits, you know, without telling you about it when you've been told you were going to get it.
All right, how about if we go ahead and move on with the vote? Mitch, would you be able to do the roll call? Oh, I think I wanted to say I thank everybody for your input. I think it's very, very valuable. And Barbara, I understand your point as well. So thank you everybody for that.
Christy, I just have to, I want to be clear in my mind what we're going to be voting on now with Barbara's comments. Are we assuming, should I assume that we're not going to separate them, that they're going to be together? Where are we?
Do we want, would your vote be any, I don't really know about this. Would your vote be, are you going to vote for yes to both of them? You know, because if so, then let's just have it all together, you know?
Yeah.
Do we have a split vote otherwise?
I will vote yes for both of them
Mm-hmm.
individually. But
Okay,
if they're tied together and we can't guarantee what we would like to see for the commercial guys,
mm-hmm.
then I think we're abdicating our public safety responsibility if
Okay.
that doesn't go through. So I would be a yes vote on each of them individually, but since we can't guarantee the one, then you know I have a problem with that.
Okay. Claire?
Maybe we could just add a statement, vote separately on them, because it sounds like we would probably all make a yes statement for both of them, but also put in a statement that would say we are strongly recommending the second one, or I'm not sure how to do it, that the supporting of both of these is of utmost importance to TIPCAC. You know, do something like that if we separate them, to put something into that indicates this is something that almost isn't negotiable, but safety is a big issue. I mean, I see where Barb's coming from.
I think I see where you guys are coming from with that too, but when the one doesn't go through, it's sort of like, you know, almost just like kicking the dog when it's down. So
yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, just taking food off our tables, pretty much what's happening.
Yeah, and maybe then if we're going to have a temporary restriction on things about safety, nobody gets to go to the ghost hole. That's fair.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, somebody else had their hand up.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I mean, I agree with Shane and Craig. Just the aspect of, I'm going to go back to raking. All of a sudden it was sprung on us. It's OFDW's job to make sure that each commercial fisherman knows how much quota is left. And we got sprung on, you know, a quota on the rakers, and it affected a lot of the rakers for 2 months. So things can be done. It just seems like they're done out of order and out of turn. And that's it. They should be able to go harvest those 49,000 pounds of horse necks. It's what it is. So that's my opinion on it.
All right. So why don't we do it separately? Why don't we do them separate? But we're going to say that one is a safety issue, but we want them both passed. I mean, I don't know how to sway the ODFW folks, you know, with our exact wording. I don't know how to make this better. maybe we have the temporary rule that's before noon, and the next one is allocate the remaining gaper cap, landing cap. Is that acceptable if we do the vote in two parts?
Yeah, it's just real tricky grounds to walk through because I mean it's my personal opinion. It seems highly likely that the time restriction will be passed and then our quota will be denied. I mean,
Yeah.
speaking truthfully, I mean that's just how I personally feel about that. To move forward with the time restriction thing, I would say maybe that time restriction with allowance to additional areas like the Sow and Pig and north of Hobsonville. And
Yeah,
I mean, it's nothing but the commercial side losing. I haven't seen any compromise with the sport people at all. And our raking, that's something I can't go and do. We've lost quota on our gapers, and now we're getting restricted to our butter clams, which is the only thing we get now. That's 3 huge hits to the commercial side, and there's been no compromise on the sporting side whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, nobody's been enforcing the rules for when people are over the line. So if you guys, if you guys haven't been doing anything about that when I've complained about it, because people are going out of their way to take quota out from under another boat by getting into some ground that's not normally harvested, and nothing's been done about it for years. But now it's all of a sudden a big issue that we can't get out of these other guys' way to go over there. Because there's a line there that nobody's paid any attention to this whole time anyway, unless you're actually just trying to be an upstanding, and worry about your future of your business,
Okay, well, we need to take a vote. If it doesn't pass, that's fine, but we're out of time. So we have two proposals right now. One is the priority, and this is the full proposal that we had at the table, which was the temporary rule along with the allocation of the remaining landing cap. And then we have a second one that is just the rule for area restriction before noon. Okay, so can we go through and do a roll and try to get our votes cast, and then we can just to try to get us back on what we wanted to accomplish this meeting. Okay.
I'll be happy, Christy, to call names for votes. I'll do the roll call.
Yes, please do.
Everybody ready for a roll call on voting on this first priority issue? Okay, first, Claire Thomas, cast your vote.
Yes.
Greg Andes, cast your vote.
Yes.
Barbara Trout, cast your vote.
No.
Shane Riley, cast your vote.
Yes.
Brent Collier, cast your vote.
Yes.
Brett Semp, cast your vote.
Yes.
And Christy, cast your vote.
Yes.
Okay, let's move down to the second issue.
So the second one is if for some reason the board was not to approve the allocation of the remaining landing cap, to just have the temporary rule with the area restriction for the safety part of it only. So this is what we're voting on now.
And we'll go same order. Claire Thomas, cast your vote.
No.
Greg Andes, cast your vote.
Sorry, Craig, we can't hear you.
I'd say no, because it can be up to the individual captain to make a decision whether he's being safe or not.
Yep.
Barbara Trout, cast your vote.
Yes.
Shane Riley, cast your vote.
No.
Brent Collier, cast your vote.
Yes.
Brett Semp, cast your vote.
No.
And Christy Foster, cast your vote.
I'm gonna say no.
Okay.
All right, thank you. And I certainly understand everybody's votes. So thank you. I think this is important. Do you guys from ODFW have what you need to make this recommendation then?
Yes, I think we do. As long as we capture the notes as we have them on these panels, we can craft a request to ODFW leadership.
Okay, great. Thank you. We need to wrap up because we're out of time. We still have quite a bit to do. We have 2 more topics that we haven't discussed at all. We've got several topics that are mandated by the statute. We have several topics that we need to figure out our recommendations, and then we have quite a few topics that we haven't talked about yet. So we've been meeting every 2 to 3 months. We probably need 1 full meeting just to do the topics that are mandated by the statute. So I would say that might need to be our priority for next time. But we're starting to get into the holidays. I would hope that maybe we could do something in November because we probably need to have more rather than fewer meetings. Would everybody be okay with that in November?
Yes, I would.
Okay. We'll also need to start figuring out what it is that we're going to put in the report and all of that. I think the one thing we wanted to say is by what time do we want to have the report into ODFW, and we can then from there work backwards on how many times we need to meet and what we need to do.
So what's the status of the Clam survey? Is that just off the table now? Because this whole legislation was developed to take place after we had some actual data. So is there nothing going on with Secor here in Tillamook, right?
Not until next year, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
But that was, if you look at what was mandated in the legislation, this committee was supposed to deal with that data. So I'm
Barbara?
frustrated.
I agree with you, Barbara. That's something we're all frustrated, but that's out of our hands. That's due to all these COVID regulations. I mean, commercial side, sports side, that's everybody on this council. That's what we are craving the most, is to have that C-Corp data. So you're not the only one that's feeling like a little frustrated that it's just out of our hands. That's just the way it's
So, but what I suggested a few meetings ago was that we go back to the legislature and say we need to delay this report until we have the data.
Yes.
100%.
So
is that something, Barbara, is that something that you can lead? Do you know whom to talk to and how to push that forward and have that taken into consideration to change the statute?
well, I can talk to the chief sponsor of the bill, Senator Betsy Johnson.
That would be fantastic.
Yes, more time would be great, just due to all these complications with regulations due to COVID situation and the delay of C-Corp, because that's the key element that is really needed for all of this. So I strongly be in favor of delaying.
I would too. I mean, we're going to make much decisions with that, but if that's something that you could go talk with Betsy about, Barbara, that would be fantastic.
Could I ask why, when I went and raked at Neatarts once this year, they seem to be doing a survey there, and instead of in Tillamook?
Yeah, Craig. So the Secor team, we heard extensively from Tony DeAndrea, and he let us know that the next Secor stock estimate survey will be done in 2022 in Tillamook. In the meantime, he is out working under restricted, limited work basis, doing other kind of work. It's not the regular Secor stock estimate work. What you saw out there at Neatarts was a drone survey done with aerial survey of the intertidal zone. But it's a totally different job.
But everybody was you know, walking around and doing what they do like they normally do with the boat and launching it. There's absolutely no difference from doing an actual survey from what you guys were actually asked to do than to have what was going on there that I witnessed that day. So I was kind of slightly confused by it being over there to see them out there, you know, all in the boat doing their thing. When apparently it's really difficult to do that in Tillamook because the COVID's so bad on those sand flats out there.
No, it has not. It doesn't have to do with the level of COVID out on the sand flats. So
I was being very sarcastic.
Understood. Understood. Our various work teams within ODFW Marine Program have to put together a COVID safety plan that encompasses all of their work. That includes not only stuff outside and on the tide flats, but the prep work, the traveling together or not in vehicles, staying overnight, meals in hotels, overnight accommodations, all that kind of stuff. Submit that all to our leadership safety program. So we don't have an approved COVID safety plan for the seeker work for last year or for this existing year. We're anticipating that we'll have the green light to go forward with that next year, and that's what Tony presented was the work plan for that. They did gain the approval to do the drone surveys, which were not overnight for many of the participants, and it's a different job. So they got approval for that.
But the money that would have been spent on the Sea Corps survey in Tillamook Bay was spent elsewhere this year?
That's correct. So the team worked here in Yaquina Bay for short-term work that didn't require overnight travel or travel in different vehicles, that kind of stuff, to refine the accuracy of, in particular, their gaper clam assessments to better characterize the actual abundance as they may be encountered in groups and clusters of gaper clams in the population. So they work to refine that protocol.
And that's very good, but 85 to 90% of all commercial clams come out of Tillamook. And what's the percentage that comes out of Yaquina?
That's a small percentage that comes out of Yaquina Bay, but the refinement to their protocol that they've developed here, working at home in a safe manner, will be extended to the new seeker surveys up in Tillamook Bay.
I just wanted to have brought that up so that you understood all of our frustration, Barbara, because that's this management that I'm talking about that I rest my case on.
All right, folks, we are 10 minutes over and we want to be respectful of everybody's time. So let's just say we will plan to meet again in November. Barbara, if you can touch base with Betsy before then and report back to us in November or sooner by email, that would be great too.
I'll call her tonight.
Oh, even better. That would be fantastic. Is there anything else that ODFW needs from the committee at this point?
Well, I'd like to just, thank everybody for the open, frank discussions. That's what these kind of advisory committees are all about. So, we're hoping that the recommendations that you put together will reflect, good improvements, and that there's something that everybody can live with. And it's very helpful to have participation by the Oregon State Police, who are charged with enforcement of these kinds of things. So I want to express my appreciation there as well. In terms of, we were hoping to come up with a date for your report to us, and we will need some time, so I'd encourage you to target a date in the summer or very early fall of 2022 when we get to that point. So working backwards, as Christy suggested, if we think about that, that will give us, 6 or 7 months left of meetings, about that kind of time frame.
And if you could perhaps let us know, Steve, by email, anything that we need to do to help with the signage or to support in any way, so that can be a priority and that those signs can get out as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I'll work on that tomorrow. I won't call them tonight because it's 4:30, but I'll write a memo to Marine Board tomorrow.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you very, very much. I really, really appreciate it.
Yep, great talk, and yeah, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.